Something strange is going on as one of the Islanders' top prospects has suddenly changed their off-season plans. We're going to explain why that is on this episode of Islanders Digest and also talk about some fun stats with Matthew Schaefer, really showing that I think the potential when it comes to his offensive side of his game is a lot higher than people are giving him credit for. Really quickly before we get started on this episode of Islanders Digest, we are just 6 subscribers away from 1,600. So if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Be sure to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all of you who've already subscribed to the channel, supporting the channel as we continue to make Islanders content every single day on this offseason. With that, let's get right into talking about this strange move that I honestly really like for Victor Eklund, as Victor Eklund will no longer be representing Team Sweden at the World Junior Summer Showcase. And my first reaction, I was a bit disappointed about this, just because I think, especially with not much hockey going on in the summer, it's super exciting to talk about and just watch your prospects play in this showcase. And I really believe that Victor Eklund would have absolutely torn it up at this tournament and really made a lot of teams in the NHL already look bad for not drafting him earlier than 16. We've talked about it several times on this channel, but I truly believe it's ridiculous that Victor Eklund went all the way to 16 to the New York Islanders. I'm not going to complain. I'm super grateful, but I think this showcase would have showcased that really quickly, just right away. The same way a couple years ago, you remember when the Islanders drafted Aatu Räty in the second round, and then he instantly had a really strong World Junior Summer Showcase to show that, hey, this guy was drafted a little later than he should have. But per his agent, I think the reasoning for Eklund not joining this showcase is actually really good, and I think long term, this is the right decision for Eklund, especially considering he already had a full season of hockey last year. If this is a situation like Schaefer, where he missed almost the entire year, then I would probably want him to play in the summer showcase to get more games under his belt. But Eklund played plenty of hockey last season. At this point, as his agent says, the main reason why he's not playing is they don't want to disrupt his summer training program. And Victor Eklund is in a really unique situation this year. I think Frundell, his teammate, and the 3rd overall pick in this draft, and I think he actually went a bit high, but his teammate is also making the same decision here, as their team in Sweden is actually moving up to the SHL because they played well. Their team has gotten a promotion, and as a result, Victor Eklund, while was already playing with men last season, this season he's going to be playing in the top league in Sweden, playing with really high-end competition. And this is why I think it's so great for him to be going back to Sweden next year to play hockey rather than coming to play for the AHL with the Islanders. While I do think it would be really cool to have him so close to home and be able to watch him in Bridgeport, which actually might be the last year that the Bridgeport Islanders are in Connecticut, which is a little disappointing. But focusing on the positive here, he's going to be playing in a really good league next year, and he was a big part of that promotion, and I expect him to be playing even more minutes along with Frundell next season. And makes a lot of sense considering they are moving up a level, that he is going to be focusing on building up his body and really trying to put on strength this summer. And I think the fact that he understands it's the best for his game long term is really exciting, especially when you consider this goal of building up his body, putting on more muscle, becoming stronger, faster, is also going to work towards making him closer to being NHL ready. In addition to making him more equipped to play in the SHL, this is already going to help him become an NHL level player, perhaps even faster, since he's focusing on this rather than playing in the junior showcase. And honestly, when it comes to Eklund, I think that showcase, while very exciting, is almost beneath him in the sense where he's already playing with professional players. He doesn't need to go back down and show how much he can dominate kids, considering that that's not who he plays against on the regular. Victor Eklund, what really impresses me with his stats, yes, he doesn't have those 110 points in whatever many games from the OHL. playing in Sweden in the Swedish 1 league. He was playing against Mun and he put up 31 points. Also consider, in a league like this, it's a professional league and they're not just playing you to develop you. You're only getting ice time if you are helping the team win. Again, this team got promoted this season, and as a result, not only do I think this is better for Eklund's development, I also think it's really exciting to see the numbers he was able to put up, and keep in mind that he's earning those minutes and those points. He's not just getting out there because he is a highly touted prospect. He's not competing against 16-year-olds to get more ice time. He's competing with grown men, and I think this is the right decision for Eklund, and especially considering that the one knock, and I really don't think this should have been a knock, especially considering, again, he was playing with men, but the big knock on Eklund was his weight being around 161 pounds, especially considering his frame was 5'11", and considering that he's taking this summer to work out and really put on some weight. This is exactly what you want to see as an Islander fan. Let me know in the comments if you're disappointed about him not participating in the summer showcase. The one thing that is a bit disappointing is it would have been exciting to see Eklund play and, just get to watch him dominate these players. But I really think at this point, this is the right decision for his career, and I'm really excited to see what he does next season now that he's going to be playing in the SHL, which I believe is one of the best hockey leagues in the world. Now, I also do want to touch a little bit on Matthew Schaefer. He's a player, unlike Eklund, who really did not play a full season last season. And one thing I think that has kind of gotten forgotten when it comes to Schaefer is how, especially because of how young he is, this is not really expected to impact his development curve just because he was so young going into this season and really so far ahead of where other defensemen are at this point. It's really hard to comprehend, especially considering just the small sample size. But Big Head Hockey pointed out that Matthew Schaefer is the youngest first overall pick ever in the expansion era. He's the youngest one. I believe previously it was Nathan MacKinnon, and as you remember, Nathan MacKinnon took a bit longer to develop just because he was so young. Schaefer is younger than even MacKinnon, and this, when you put in his stats and you factor those in, it really paints a picture that I think there's more offense on the table when it comes to Matthew Schaefer. Everybody raves about his skating, his ability to play on the rush, and they talk about how realistically he's going to be a 50, 60 point defenseman. And I do think that is Schaefer's floor. That is how high on Schaefer I am. But I think some people, when they look at his offensive stats, and granted, he only played 17 games, and I understand that is a small sample size, but when they look at his stats, they really fail to acknowledge when they're comparing it to other defensemen that the defensemen that they're comparing him to put those stats up at a much older age. Schaefer being 17, putting up, I believe it was 22 points in 17 games and scoring 5 goals in 17 games. And if you watch the highlights from that season, a lot of these were just goals where he was skating through the entire team and putting up a really good breakaway move. That's actually how he got injured playing in the juniors tournament. He skated directly into the post and broke his collarbone. When you look at his goal rates compared to other highly touted defensive prospects, you'll see, especially comparing him to defensemen such as Evan Bouchard, who is considered one of the better scoring defensemen in the NHL. Schaefer, at his age, was putting up way more goals than Bouchard was back then. And this is something I was really thinking about when Schaefer got drafted, especially comparing him to Noah Dobson's stats back when he was drafted as an offensive defenseman. Back then, Noah Dobson hadn't fully shown his potential as an offensive defenseman, and look at what he turned into. Of course, he's gone now, but he was able to put up a 70-point season last year. For Schaefer to be putting up all these points as just a 17-year-old, again, if he was 2 weeks younger, he would be in this year's draft class. I think it'll be really fun as we get closer to the draft next season to talk about where Schaefer would be in this year's draft class. I do think, especially once he has a dominant season, wherever he plays, whether it be in the OHL or if it be college, or even if he somehow cracks the New York Islanders, I think quickly people are going to realize that Schaefer has gotten a little underrated when it comes to fans and their expectation of him going forward. Obviously, he's a first overall pick, but I think the offense is going to be a lot more potent as he continues to develop. A lot of people, when they talk about Schaefer, they're like, oh, well, he's not a McCarr, he's not a Quinn Hughes, he's not going to be putting up that type of points, and perhaps he's not, but I think it's really interesting when people just dismiss Schaefer as not being that type of guy, because when you look back at when those players were drafted, they were not putting up the type of points that Schaefer was at the level he was playing. And that's something really interesting to consider. Another thing I noticed, Sean Aitchison actually ranks really high on this list in terms of how many goals he's scoring per game. And unlike Schaefer, he actually had a pretty high sample size. So that's going to be really interesting to see moving forward. I definitely think Sean Aitchison has a lot more goal scoring potential than people give him credit for. But let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think people are underrating Schaefer because of that small sample size and not really factoring in how young he was playing this season? I think a lot of people look at his first season in the OHL and see that he only put up, I believe it was like 15 or so points in his first season, and forget that he was basically the youngest player in the OHL when he put up those points. And keep in mind, he was also playing a ton of defensive minutes. I'm super high on this player, and I'm also really high on Victor Eklund, and I can't wait to see what these prospects do in this coming season. It would have been nice to see him play in the junior showcase, but I think this is the best move for Eklund. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.